Hey, Chapter 4, my first job. My first job was milking cows for Milton Lott. He was a younger dairyman about 8 miles from my home in St. Ignatius. I was 18 years old and had just finished my senior year. Before I continue, let me first give you the backstory. Growing up in our family always included what we called chores and work. They were different. Chores were work that you did every day that helped you learn responsibility and how to work. An example of chore type work included feeding the animals every day. If it was your chore to feed the calves, you made sure it was done early enough to get ready for school and not miss the school bus. Another chore would be to move a quarter-mile sprinkler line across the pasture for irrigation. That might be 1, 2, or 3 lines total. Helping my father get the dairy cows in from the pasture to the holding pen and ready to be milked was another. This chore also twice a day, before and after school. Another chore that I remember was cleaning out the dairy cows, individual sleepers every morning. Cleaning out the dairy cows, individual sleepers every morning. They had sawdust bedding that had to have manure removed. After these 100 beds were cleaned, the cement had to be scraped by a tractor and blade into an underground holding pit where water was added and mixed with a large propeller drive by a tractor's real power takeoff shaft. The watery manure was sucked out every third Saturday into our honey wagon, and from there pulled out into the fields and sprayed onto the grass for fertilizer. These were considered chores, and we were paid a modest amount of money, which was added into each person's page in an accounting ledger that my father kept. Each month, he would reconcile our allowance against what we had spent. For example, if we wanted to buy something on a particular day, we were given some money. After discussing the expenditure with my father, he would then evaluate what and why we were buying something. If it was a foolish purchase, he would try to convince us to save and not spend. In the end, it was our decision, however. The work that was not chores and called work was learning to milk all the dairy cattle on our own without help, plowing and spring toothing the wheat fields in the spring, picking rocks from the plowed fields before planting, branding beef cattle and removing their horns, after which we herded or drove them by horse and rider to what we called the summer pasture, which was about 20 miles from the home place. My grandfather owned land in another area of the valley which was used for summer grazing by our Black Angus beef cattle. As spring turned to summer, there was hay to cut, rake, and bale. The fields had covered with heavy hay bales that had to be loaded onto the trucks and stacked in the 2 large hay sheds. Those were hot and sweaty memories, but I enjoyed the work. As summer turned to fall, we had grain to harvest, fence lines to rebuild or replace, and sprinkler lines to haul out of the fields to store again through the winter. While we had work, we also had daily chores that were done year-round, slightly modified to just milking and feeding the animals on the Sabbath. Now I return to the Milton lot and my first real job. It amuses me to this day that my siblings and I considered working for someone else as a real job. I could have stayed working with my father for years. He told us boys that all we needed was a college degree in anything, and we could come back and have interest in our place full-time, including raising our families. The only son that was interested in that option was my brother Gar. I was dreaming of adventure in the world around me, and the first steps was to get a real job by working someplace else for someone else. Mitt knew my father, and although he didn't know any of his boys, he was sure that he knew all about milking cows, which he did. He offered me a full-time job milking Mondays through Saturdays with Sundays off. It was easy work because there were no chores included with it, no heavy bales to buck, sprinkler lines to move, or rocks to pick. I just milked his cows and was paid $300 a month, which was the going wage for milking dairy cattle full-time. After about 6 months, I was becoming restless and wanted to do something more. It seemed like I was going nowhere, and I wasn't. I was out of school, and there was a world waiting for me. So I thanked Milton and explained why I was moving on. He was a great person. I really liked him and felt he liked me. He would often come into the milk house just to talk. At first, I thought it was to check on my work, but after I realized that it was just to talk about anything. It was a great job in the context of first jobs.